Don't worry, 49ers fans. The 49ers assure you that they're not being cheap. What's up? Welcome to Cohn and Kruger. That's Larry Kruger. I'm Grant Cohn. I was just joking to start the show. We got an opportunity to ask John Lynch big questions about a perplexing offseason, and he gave us answers. The big topic really was Brock Purdy. You all heard what he said, or you read what he said because they didn't let us post the audio. I don't know. What do you think of how the Niners are handling the Brock Purdy negotiation so far? Are you pleased?
Well, I would say that's probably the biggest takeaway is that Lynch made it seem today like while there's no guarantee that a deal can get done at all with Purdy, he made it seem like it's likely that a deal with Purdy is going to be done by the middle of April, which is the start of the OTAs, which, Grant, I have to think is Brock's direct orders to his agent, Kyle Strongen. You get me, yes, you can be the bad guy. I'll be the good guy. You ask for the moon. I'll say, oh, shucks, I just want to be here. But Kyle, you get me in there by OTAs, the beginning of the OTAs. And I personally, I don't know Brock, any more than anybody else knows him. But I just don't think that he wants to miss even a minute of the OTAs. There's no way in hell he's going to let Mac Jones step out on that field and do anything that would potentially, give Mac the starting quarterback job. So I do believe Lynch when he says that they could have a deal done by mid-April, the start of OTAs, and I think that's coming from Brock, all from Brock.
Interesting. I think that's exactly what the Niners think. I think they're anticipating. I think they feel that Brock Purdy really doesn't care that much about money, and that this is more of a push from the agent. And I think they think the agent is a flat out lightweight. Like, this isn't the guy representing Aiyuk or Nick Bosa. This isn't a guy who's accustomed to representing big money players who were first round picks. This is a guy who is representing Mr. Irrelevant and just hit the freaking lottery. And I think the Niners feel like they're going to work Kyle Strongen. Maybe they're wrong, but I think they feel Purdy's going to ask them to let down the demands as soon as OTAs start, and they're going to get him for $50 million-ish a year, nothing near 60. Maybe they're wrong, but I think that's what they think.
Well, one thing to note here, Grant, and I think you know this. I think we talked about this. They know each other. I mean, it's not like they don't know Kyle Strongen. Kyle Strongen used to work in the 49er organization. He's got personal relationships with Jed, with Parag. It was before Lynch and Shanahan, so I don't know what kind of working relationship he has with them. But Parag Marathe did not meet Kyle Strongen in the midst of these negotiations. They've known each other for years. So I don't know. I mean, it's
you're right. He was in scout. He was a scout for them from 08 to 09. Wow.
Yeah, he was in their personnel department. So yeah,
wow.
He knows them and they know him, or at least the ownership and the organization. Some people know him. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that is relevant or pertinent in any way to this, but it's interesting. I mean, Lynch was asked about the Purdy timeline, the contract timeline. He says, I think we're going to get a deal done. That's what I believe. It's not unrealistic to think that Purdy's deal could be done by the start of OTAs, which would be a couple of weeks, but it's not a guarantee. And the interesting thing is that I got to think that making Brock Purdy, playing super hardball with Brock Purdy is not the way to go here from the standpoint of, if they made him play at $5.2 million, he'd make less money than Mac Jones.
Yeah, but it's this isn't like this. He's not Nick Bosa. Like, he's not coming off a defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year, MVP. He's coming off a down season, a losing season where he got hurt twice, and his agent is B-list. So I don't think the Niners are that scared of Brock right now. I think they want Brock. I think they feel they're going to have Brock, but it's like, you can either play out your contract, take the offer, or take the offer we're giving you. Like, you're not going anywhere. And we're not scared of you. You're not going to hold out. You're a nice guy. You're a nice guy. And that's why we like you. And this agent of you, he's all talk. That's the way I feel. I don't think they're actually scared for a minute. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're misjudging Brock. Maybe Brock wants to look like a nice guy and an aw shucks guy, but he has his agent for a reason. And maybe he'll just let the agent do his job. I don't know. I don't have a prediction.
We know the bottom line, right? The bottom line is $97 million is what Brock would make if they made him play for 5.2 and franchised him for the next 2 years. He would make roughly $97 million. So let's call it 100. So let's just say $100 million. The Niners kind of know that every penny over $100 million is money that they don't really need to spend.
Correct.
So they could. So I think they're going to be very hardball in their negotiations. But at the same time, there is an advantage to the 49ers to get it done, right? Because if you get it done, then you can spread that money around a little bit. It becomes more palatable for your cap. So there is, if you're going to pay a guy a lot of money, it's a better situation for the team if they can get a deal as opposed to play it out on the cap and this and that, or play it out with the what's it called? The lecture. You know what I'm saying? The franchise tag.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. All I'm saying is that you're right about that. But this team just got burned by Brandon Aiyuk. And it wasn't necessarily his fault. He got hurt. But I think it's fair to wonder if the Niners will suddenly be more careful about giving out like franchise record extensions to players who have some questions. Maybe one great year, maybe some injuries. I mean, in retrospect, Aiyuk might have had fewer questions than Brock, and the Niners got burned. So maybe the Niners are going to say, you know what? Maybe we will let this play out. Maybe we are willing to get some more evidence so we feel more confident about giving you $60 million a year next year. And maybe Brock is so confident that he would say, you know what? I'll play out my rookie year. No problem. I'll play it out. I'll go to the playoffs. I'll be an MVP candidate. You'll pay me $70 million a year next year. And that's what Lamar did once upon a time.
If I was Kyle Strongen, there's no way in hell I would let Brock Purdy go back on that field behind this offensive line for $5 million with no guarantees. No way. No way. I wouldn't do it. But, here's the other thing.
Mac Jones will do it for $3 million.
I know. But here's the other thing that I think it needs to be mentioned here is there's our view of what's reality, and then there's the Niners' view of what's reality, and they don't necessarily align. For example, John Lynch said today they love Jake Brendel. They think Colton McKivitz is awesome. They love him. They think they've got a really good offensive line. I think he said really steady, I think was the word. We got a really steady offensive line. That's funny because
sounds like a B-.
PFF says that they don't have a really steady offensive line. But, this Niners we've been in this spot before with the Niners where, hey, man, everybody says they need a safety and they don't think they need one. In this case, everybody says they need an offensive lineman. I'll say this, all these people talking about Membu and Campbell, I would say think again. I mean, if the 49ers like Trent Williams, he's a Hall of Famer. They like Dom Pooney. He's their hand-picked right guard. They like their in-house candidates to replace their left guard, even to suggest that maybe some of their in-house candidates might be better or an upgrade on Aaron Banks. And they just told you that they like Brendel and they like McKivitz. So I would say there's no chance in hell they're going to draft an offensive lineman in the first round. They're going defensive tackle for sure.
And I don't even know if they're going to take a guard in round 3 like they did last year because Burford, his contract, his base salary jumps to about $3.5 million this year. And what I think the theme of the offseason for the Niners is it doesn't seem like they're going to be paying people to do nothing this year. So $3.5 million, that's the difference between the Niners signing and not signing Joey Bosa, $3 million. So Burford, you're here, you're making it, you might play. Doesn't mean it's the right move, but I feel like that's the way the Niners are treating their roster this year. You got to earn your money.
Point. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, but it's also I guess my point was just that even though like your premise was, hey, Brock's coming off a down year. Well, if you're thinking that Brendel is just fine, then maybe you aren't in the camp that thinks that Brock's coming off a down year. If you think Jake Brendel is fine, then you might think that Brock Purdy was awesome this year. I mean, it's possible. If you're that
It's possible.
disconnected from PFF's reality on Brendel,
That's true.
then your connection on reality for any player could be totally not in line with what the fans think, see, or any of us, you know?
Right. True. I just think that it's possible the Niners feel a little PTSD from Aiyuk. And this Purdy, one way or another, he's going to end up being the highest paid player in franchise history. And I wonder if they feel like, would it be smart for us to give up, $60 million a year to Brock because that's the market? Because essentially that's what happened last. They didn't want to pay Aiyuk. All their instincts said, don't pay Aiyuk. But the market was the market. They ended up giving him $30 million a year, instantly regretted it. And now they really regret it. So one doesn't necessarily have to do with the other. I could just see how human beings get skittish. I want to ask you about Brock. He did these 2 podcasts recently. Really interesting. So I want to ask you about the 2 big news items from these podcasts. One, he said that the team last year was really tired. It was a big factor in the malaise in the down season. I mean, it's got to be a lot of truth to it. He's not a BS artist. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, okay. First of all, any reason for failing always comes across like weak sauce, right? Why did you not?
We didn't get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, or just it could be us, Hey, Krug, how come you only had 300 people watching that video instead of 700? Well, you know what? I can say
it was the time of day. It was Niners
time of day.
Yeah.
Kev had the wrong label, and this, and Grant was going on at the same time, but they're all just weak sauce excuses, right? And it's just like, hey, it is what it is. Don't make excuses. So on one hand, I don't like excuses. On the other hand, I think he's totally right. I think the Niners were a gassed, tired football team whose general manager is gassed and tired, whose head coach is beyond gassed and tired. Who looked like it was the end of the season on the first day. And
real quick, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I want to linger on this point because it's so good. To me, when he's talking about fatigue, I don't even know if he knows it, but he's talking about mental fatigue more than maybe even physical fatigue. And you see it on Kyle's face.
I think the whole team
was lose Super Bowl like that?
Yeah. I mean, they were totally gassed. As far as emotionally gassed from the year before. They didn't have a long enough break. Then they had the schedule from hell. Then they had a lot of tragedy. But I'll tell you, the
holdout after holdout after holdout.
Holdouts. But the game that really stood out to me was the second Seattle game, because that was the biggest rest disadvantage the Niners had all year. And it came in a game that they should have won and needed badly to win and had absolutely nothing left in the tank defensively at the end of that game. Gino, I mean, we laughed at Campbell because he ran right by Campbell on the touchdown run, but the Niners had no pressure, no juice, no life, no energy. They were totally spent in the second half of that game. And I think it was.
What about week 3?
I think it's a weak excuse, but I think it's true.
I agree, but I think the reason why I would lean more towards the emotional, mental fatigue, although physical, clearly you're an older team, a lot of football games, but like the Chiefs played a lot of football games. The Bills played a lot of football games. I think it was more of an emotional toll because week 3 against the Rams, they were 1-1. You lost to the Vikings, but that was a really good team. You go play the Rams who don't have Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp and you lose. That's when in retrospect, you could see like there is something very, very wrong with this team. Sure, you don't have Christian McCaffrey, but you do have Trent Williams. You do have Brandon Aiyuk, and you lost to them? That was bad.
I could see that, but my argument would be they missed 20 times in the first 3 rounds in between 17 and this year. 20 times. Your team is built with the players that you take in rounds 1, 2, and 3. That's like the meat and potatoes of your football team. When you miss 20 times between 2017 and right now, that catches up with you. And it caught up with them this year. I mean, they it wasn't just that Greenlaw went down, is that here comes Flanagan fouls, for crying out loud. It's like you don't have Aziz anymore. It's not just that, Hargrave went out. It's just that the guys coming in weren't any good. And you're signing guys off the street. So their lack of depth burned them. once. I mean, it's easy to go, well, they had injuries. Yeah, but everybody has injuries. They weren't the most injured team. They weren't as injured as Detroit, but Detroit had better backups because their general manager has done a better job than our general manager in the last 3 years in the draft. So the lack of hitting in the draft led to a dramatic lack of depth. And then once you had a couple injuries, it was like you're cooked. And then I really do believe they can blame fatigue, but they can blame fatigue because they had on a 53-man roster like 20 guys doing all the heavy lifting and a bunch of guys doing nothing.
Other thing Purdy talked about was himself. He said this was so interesting, kind of unprompted, that when he throws from the pocket, he sees where he's throwing 60% of the time. 40% of the time, he doesn't really see where he's throwing. And he said, this really doesn't have anything to do with my height. This is something that Brian Greasy said he experienced as well. And it's just, life of being an NFL quarterback. And it shows why processing is so important and knowing like a theoretical sense of where players are supposed to be given coverages and what your offense is doing. What did you think of that admission?
Well, it plays like a major headline grabber. He didn't know where he was throwing the ball 40% of the time, But in reality, he's just speaking totally honestly about the quarterback's viewpoint standing behind 6'6", 6'7" offensive linemen, because typically all your offensive tackles are that big. You absolutely have to have an account of where the defenders are. The fact that he made it a 60-40 thing where he doesn't see 40% of the time.
That was interesting to me.
That is interesting. And it's like
the ratio.
You would think that he would have a whole lot more turnovers, more interceptions than he even had. If 40% of the time the ball's coming out of your hands, you don't have an account for where the defenders are. I think what he means by that
a visual confirmation.
Well, and you're going to see
beyond
you're going to see somebody, but you're not going to see everybody. You're not going to get
right.
You're not getting the all 22 that we get, where you can see exactly where the defenders are. If you've done your reps mentally going into the game, you should know the coverage and where the defenders should be.
Right, like it's cover 3, so you know where they should be. But right. Sometimes people freelance. Sometimes there's busted coverages. I mean, that's why they play the game.
But he also made.
I thought it was a really interesting.
It was interesting, but the other point that he made to try to take the, deflate some of the reaction was, hey man, it's not about my stature only. It's about just this is the way it is playing quarterback in the NFL. Like every quarter, he made it seem like every quarterback. And I think what he's saying is just that you don't see everybody at all times. You have to have an account for where they are, and you got to know. It's just if you're going to throw with anticipation, you're going to throw a guy open. You got to know there's no defender lurking back there. So I think he's got a sense of that. But yeah, it played like 40% of the time he's just flipping a coin, like he's throwing 50-50 balls 40% of the time, and I don't think it's quite that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is the ratio. It's like every quarterback throws blind. Steve Young's talked about it. Like if you are waiting for visual confirmation that a player is open before you throw the ball, most of the time you're too late. And like you don't want Alex Smith, who was. See, that's why I feel like the ratio is so interesting. It's a spectrum. Brock spoke for all quarterbacks, but I don't know that all quarterbacks would say, yeah, it's 60-40 for me. For Alex Smith, it might have been 90-10. And I don't know what the ideal ratio is. Probably it's different for every quarterback. But when I look at Brock, I'm like, man, interceptions are kind of an issue with you. Like your interception rate's been going up season after season, especially in the second half. Maybe dial it back to 30% until that's not an issue. And then you can, like when you're Drew Brees, freaking throw blind all day. I don't care, but you're not there yet. You're 25. You're still improving. Maybe take it down to 30. I'm just trying to compromise here, negotiate.
Yeah. I mean, my first reaction, if I heard that and I was sitting there, I'd be like, hey,
40%?
Well, let's forget the percentages for just a second, but let's just go back to the Ram game, the end of the year on the blind throw down the field on first
ended
down.
the season,
ended the Niners playoff hopes. That was a blind look. I know that was a blind look because you could tell there was a defender bearing down on him. That was a totally blind look.
And Kyle talked about it. He was like, no, it was the right read because Juwan should have been open, but he got bumped and the ball was already in the air. It's like, yeah.
He fought back when I said to him, I said, how do you coach that level of aggressiveness out of Brock? And he's like, well, I don't think that's over aggressive, but I do, because if you go back and look at that play, there was 3 offensive weapons underneath, and the defenders were all on the downfield side of those guys. They were giving them the underneath.
And it was first down.
And it's like, you can't.
And you're in field goal range.
Season. Yeah, and it's just risk reward. You can't end your season on a blind look into double coverage. When there's 3 guys open underneath, on first down. I mean, it's just, there are times to take that shot, but it's called fourth down. Or,
and what I like about Brock
third down
is I feel like he wouldn't push back. If he were here with us right now on the show, he'd be like, yeah, that's fair. I like that about Brock so much. He takes accountability, and he's not like a super egomaniac. Like, yeah, that's fair. I could do better with that.
Or he might maybe throw a little wrinkle in there. You know what? I wanted to go underneath, but I did see, something that we didn't know. But you're right, though, Grant. He would own it. He would own it. And he wouldn't be like, you guys are totally wrong, and I know ball, and you don't know ball, and I've been playing, and you're not. No, he wouldn't.
He's not defensive.
No, he's not defensive because he's got a pretty good. He's got his arms around it. It's like a subject matter. He's got his arms all the way around, and he's got mental maturity, kind of like an Alex Smith or a Steve Young.
Yeah.
Well, these guys kind of know too. Hey, man, I'm going to pick my battles here because some of these things you just can't win.
And like he's replacing Jimmy, and like Jimmy was nice, Jimmy was cool, Jimmy was likable, but Jimmy wasn't serious like Brock. He didn't take accountability. He smiled off picks, and he didn't work like Brock from all accounts. So I think that's why the Niners like really want Brock to be the guy. I don't know if they want to pay him $60 million a year, but they clearly want to be in business with him long term, whatever that number is. Greenlaw, though, didn't make the cut. Sorry, Dre. This was so interesting. I mean, clearly the Niners want people to think or know that they tried really hard to bring him back. It's just that they didn't. And they made him, I guess, I don't know what the initial offer was, but they wanted him to find out his market. He found out the market. They tried to bring him back, and he felt offended or something. I mean, what do you think of the way the Niners handled the whole Dre Greenlaw situation?
Oh God, this one's so freaking frustrating in so many ways. I think, it's frustrating. Why? Because I think this guy means so much to the 49ers. And what I think, I mean, okay, so he kind of made it sound like they needed to move off of Greenlaw because of his health, that they're not really betting on him being healthy in 2025. But I get the feeling, Grant, that John and Kyle got on that bird to fly to Dallas, not to convince Dre to come back, but to save the fire that's burning in their locker room for letting the heart and soul of the team walk away with a low ball offer. And then you come back. Supposedly they offered him a low ball deal, and I don't know what it was. Some people are saying it was a 1-year deal for $10 million, but then they upped their offer in the 11th hour. And it's like, to me, they did all this stuff for the optics. It's like, if you want somebody, there's a way to do it. And if you don't want somebody, there's a way to do it. And they did it that way. They lowballed him. They waited for him to get courted by other teams and set the market. Other teams courted him, set the market. And then they tried to roll in the 11th hour to convince their roster that they did everything in their power to re-sign the most popular guy in the room. And I don't know that anybody's buying it.
I'm with you too. And I think it gets messy when you look at the different factions in the team. Like George Kittle, Juszczyk gets cut. Kittle and his wife immediately go on social media and like, this is shocking. This is awful. I'm heartbroken. 4 days later, he's back. So, okay. You wanted to make, I don't know, maybe that's not the only reason that Juszczyk's back, but Kittle had a grievance. They solved it. Don't you think some players on the defense at least are upset that Dre Greenlaw isn't here? Like Bosa said he's his favorite teammate ever. Fred Warner's like his brother. I mean, you don't think Diamador Lenore cares? I think a lot of people on the team are probably like, oh, this guy's really good. And we spent money on a backup tight end and a fullback. Like Greenlaw is legitimately better than Juszczyk. I would think, maybe no one expressed it on social media, but maybe privately they feel this way.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know exactly how the Niner players feel about
I don't
this,
know.
but it's bothersome to me that a player that's so valuable may have been, lowballed, and then they up their offer in the 11th hour when he's already decided that he wants to be a Denver Bronco. Now, Greenlaw, it sounded like, wanted to maybe move on and wanted a fresh start, but that might be because he had a bad taste in his mouth over their initial offer. His dad,
I mean, in
supposedly told him,
2023, before he popped his Achilles, it seemed like he wanted to be with the Niners long term, and they wanted him to be here long term.
right? I mean, Robert Saleh, according to the reports, was adamant that he wanted Greenlaw to return.
Yeah.
And then there was also the nugget that supposedly Dre's dad said to him, "Hey, look, if you stay here, you're always going to be, Fred's going to be MJ, you're going to be Scottie Pippen. If you move to Denver, maybe you can be the MJ." And I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe that could
like Navarro Bowman didn't like playing next to Patrick Willis. Like they diminished Navarro Bowman somehow. I don't understand that. I mean, I respect Dre Greenlaw's dad, but what?
It also kind of makes Dre look kind of like a selfish guy. And
I don't like
that's
that.
not that. I don't like that either. I don't like that either. That rubs me.
I don't think he left because of Fred Warner. I think he left because of Moolah.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what their initial offer was, but this approach of we'll lowball you initially, and then we'll come in the 11th hour and we'll try to make it all right.
It's weird.
It is.
You lose nine starters in an offseason.
Yeah, and then according to Barrows, in Barrows' piece today, he said, according to league sources, the Niners' initial offer to Greenlaw fell well short of what he ultimately got. So, if you want somebody, you come strong with your first offer. You don't lowball and then let them go find offers elsewhere and then think that you're going to have some right of refusal and you're going to get the last decision. Yep. No, he's going to fall in love somewhere else with some, and let's be totally honest about this. What's he coming back to? A team that was horrible against the run, that has not one single defensive tackle that can keep anybody off of his legs. And you're talking about, he's probably got recruited by DJ Jones, who's going to have a big say in keeping Dre's legs free. And Denver's got a way better defense and way more upside than the Niner defense right now.
Hell yeah.
Why would you want to play in the Niners defense with all the expectations?
Let me ask you this. If Fred Warner were an unrestricted free agent right now, do you think he'd want to sign here?
I mean, I think
we're an unrestricted free agent right now. Would he want to sign here?
I don't think anybody necessarily would run to sign here right now. I mean, it has, and we'll decide on draft weekend. But right now, it has a lot of yesteryear feel to it. Like the Niners are a yesterday team, where Denver's a tomorrow team. And if I'm a free agent, I'd rather sign with a tomorrow team than a yesterday team. And there supposedly were 9 teams though vying for Greenlaw. So I mean, obviously there were a lot of teams out there that didn't feel like he was done. And it doesn't sound like the Niners, according to Lynch, are necessarily ready to hand D Winters. It wasn't like, oh, we got a guy sitting here right now in Winters that we know is going to be cheaper, better, No, they're not even going to give him the job. I mean, I think it's highly likely they may draft somebody higher than we think at linebacker and promote them over Winters, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. Paul says, keep up the great work, fellas. Still freaking annoyed they brought back 44 because his friends and their wives were upset. Pathetic management. Well, allegedly. Brandon Aiyuk not getting traded tomorrow unless someone makes the Niners an offer they can't refuse, which seems highly unlikely. All of a sudden, they really like Brandon Aiyuk as a player, and they're very enthusiastic and encouraged about his future with the team. Boy, isn't that a coincidence? What do you think of the Brandon Aiyuk news?
Well, this one is interesting as hell because Chase Sr. asked him at the Combine literally a month ago, hey, what do you think of the Aiyuk rumors? And he easily, right then and there, could have been like, hey, man, he could have said then what he said today. But he didn't say then what he said today. He could have said then, hey, you know what? He's tracking well with his rehab progress. He's working really hard. I fully expect him to be part of our team moving forward. But he didn't say any of that. Now, back in February in Indy, he did this long speech about how they need to come correct with their finances. And the positive part of this is we need to get younger and healthier. And so it sounded to me like he thought he had a possibility of moving Aiyuk, and that evaporated for whatever reason, probably because of their ask, but maybe because of the knee. But ultimately, we don't know where the Niners, you know, signed Aiyuk and would rather move off of him, but we're only move off of him for a second or third round pick, or were the Niners like, hey, we want out of this deal, and somebody offer us anything, and nobody came with anything. And that part we don't know. But now today, he's tracking well, he's working hard, and we fully expect to be part of our team. And we could have said this a month ago, but we didn't. But we were never shopping him. I think they totally shopped him, and because of his price tag and probably what they're asking for, other teams were like, "Go fly a kite." That would be my guess.
Yeah.
And they're still going to pay him $22.8 million tomorrow. Lynch totally declined any kind of, to state any kind of timetable grant for his return, saying we're pleased with his progress, but that doesn't mean anything. Is he out half the year? I think he's probably going to be out till Thanksgiving. He signed through 2028. He's coming off a year where he had no touchdowns. So we'll see. We'll see. But Lynch said they have no regrets about signing him to the 4-year, $120 million contract.
You know what that means?
They have
tons of regrets.
Yeah.
They have so many regrets. I think with Brandon Aiyuk, I think they feel that he's a good player. That's why they signed him. Excellent player. Will he be as good when he comes back off this knee injury? Who knows? But I think the issue, Lynch said it today, we love Brandon Aiyuk as a player, which is a strange qualifier. As you could just say, we love Brandon Aiyuk. I think they do love Brandon Aiyuk as a player. Kyle loves Brandon Aiyuk as a player, but do they love him as a guy? I think they made it pretty clear last year that they felt he was immature, but bordering on unprofessional during the negotiation. Then Aiyuk came out after it was done and was like, yeah, I made that harder than it needed to be. I wonder if that relationship has been damaged. If both sides said things that they can't take back. It seemed like it was much messier than the Nick Bosa negotiation, which was just Nick saying, this is my number, call me when you want to give it to me, and then just being radio silent. Aiyuk and the Niners seemed like they went back and forth, and I don't know. I just don't feel like they ever got over that.
There never was a lot of warmth. You know what I mean?
No.
Even the day that, he dapped up Lynch in the signing room and signed in front of a, video scoreboard that had his picture, even that seemed a little frosty. Considering, this was the marriage of the player and the team for years to come, with multiple millions, that you would have thought it would have been like a big kumbaya, and it felt a little frosty. And then after that point, weeks after that point, we have the whole, hey, man, I'm wearing red shorts. No, take your red shorts off and put on black shorts because we are wearing black shorts. I don't want to wear
do you want to be on this team or not?
Yeah. So that whole thing happened, week 4, week whatever?
Yeah,
so
something like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was after that. So I don't know. I think that the Niners would have liked to have moved Aiyuk if they could have found a team that was willing to play ball with them. And it doesn't sound like that team was out there. I guess only reason I'm surprised is because they talked about it. He kind of referenced it so concretely in February. It seems to me that if it was even possible, Grant, that it was going to get to this point where he was back, that maybe the Niners should have chosen their words a little bit more. We love the guy. It seemed they didn't say anything like he's coming. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like you really
all the stuff they said about Juszczyk today. All the stuff they said about Juszczyk today. Well, he's a core member of our leadership. I mean, what Kyle Shanahan does schematically is completely dependent on the fly. They said all this stuff with Aiyuk. It's like, yeah, we like the player. I don't know. It just seems like he'd be in that camp with like almost Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, guys who aren't really in with the in crowd. And I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Juszczyk was interviewed about why the Niners still have a chance. And he was like, we have a lot of great players on this team. And he listed all of them except for him. He listed Jawan Jennings and not Brandon Aiyuk. I wonder how together this team is really. To me, it feels like they were together. They've been together a long time. They were winning. that masked a lot of stuff. Then they started losing. Everyone went for themselves. Everyone had their own agenda. Everyone needed extensions. Everyone had grievances. I became a topic. Like, I just wonder how tight-knit this team is anymore. I mean, Trent Williams is a complete independent contractor. Trent Taylor's on the team for God knows what reason. I mean, it seems strange. I think this exodus, this max, it needed to happen last year, and it ultimately is going to be for the betterment of the team because they need fresh blood.
Well, and they completely need to rebuild their defense. I mean,
which they haven't done yet.
At all. I mean,
is the run defense better or worse than it was at the end of the season?
How could anything be better than it was at the end of the season? They haven't added anybody.
They got Mac Jones.
Yeah, is he? Can he play? Can he make plays?
The quarterback room?
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, I'll say
play
this.
three technique.
I like two of their picks. I like Mac Jones more because it guarantees that you're going to get the best out of Brock because you're going to get an icy Brock, and I think an icy Brock is the best Brock. So I like the Jones pick because I think it does. It's kind of like signing Jimmy Butler to the deal after you traded for Jimmy Butler. Getting Jimmy Butler, nice. Giving him the contract, very nice. Signing Mac Jones, okay, but making sure you have a competitor for Brock Purdy is, I think, very important. So I like that one. I kind of like Richie Grant because I think Richie Grant is not a special teamer. I think he's got ability to play from at safety from scrimmage. The rest of the guys, I didn't, no. Luke Gifford, I wouldn't know Luke Gifford if he walked in the room. Luke Farrell, no, you could have a room full of.
I forgot about Luke Gifford.
You could get the hardest of hardcore football fans. They've never heard of Luke Gifford or Luke Farrell, and they wouldn't recognize him.
808 says, instead of lowballing Dre, why not just tell him to find out his market and come back and see if they can match? The plan is there is no plan. Yeah, it seemed like you could have done that without insulting him. But maybe the insult was the fact that the Niners and Greenlaw were negotiating something before he tore his Achilles that could have been, 4-year deal, 5-year deal, Fred Warner-esque. And then when he gets hurt, all of a sudden it's a 1-year deal. And Greenlaw's like, whoa. That's not in good faith. Now, maybe the Niners had every reason to do it, but maybe he just felt like, you don't appreciate me. And the Broncos do? Like, I want to feel appreciated for the first time in my professional career. This is a 5th-round pick who, replaced Reuben Foster and replaced Quan Alexander, but was never supposed to be the guy, never got a big extension, got a 2-year extension, which is already a prove-it deal. And now they're like, yeah, you're going to have to do it again. Like, I'd want to leave too, frankly.
I mean, more than anything, I just think that, if you don't woo somebody up front, it's hard to go back there and be like, go find your market. And then, but we want you to go find your market because we don't want to spend a nickel more than we need to spend. But go find your market. And even though that may feel like a betrayal from the team that you've, blood, sweat, and tears fought for years, don't view it as a betrayal at all. Just go out there and field offers, get offers, but have no emotional tie to any of those offers. So when we roll in the 11th hour to pay you just a nickel more than you were getting paid before, to save face in our locker room, you're just going to do an about face and just come right on back to us. It's like, that's a little, and it's like little ambitious on the night.
It's like, Dre, we love you, but not enough to really lock you down. So we're going to be in an open relationship and keep our options open and just to see if we can find someone better. But we also are open-minded about you long term, but not really sold yet. So we're going to dabble. And then Greenlaw's like, yeah, but the Broncos want to marry me. And then I was like, oh, we do too. We actually just changed our mind. You're beautiful. You're gorgeous. You're smart. You're all we need. It's like, you just told me you were keeping your options open and looking around. It's like, no. We were joking. That was a test and you passed the test. You can't have it both ways.
I mean, the other thing
too
is that Denver's got DJ Jones. DJ Jones can impact the game in front of Dre Greenlaw, and Dre Greenlaw knows it. Dre Greenlaw knows football well enough to know if you have a DJ Jones, the guard can't climb to the second level and he can't pick me off. And the Niners don't have DJ Jones.
And what Greenlaw is great at is running and hitting, not stacking and shedding.
Right. So
Yeah.
he behind, you know, last year Denver signed Zach Allen away from Arizona, right? And they have DJ Jones. And they're probably going to add something more to their defensive front at some point here. But they've got a little bit more going right now. What do the Niners have up front? The Niners have Bosa and I mean, what? I mean, Malik Collins is gone. Evan
Peter
Anderson's a second-year player.
Gross.
I mean,
I think that brings us to our next topic quite well. Dave Sim says, "Damn, could we come a long way? Earned another sub for Shizzle." I mean, it's Larry Krueger. Hold on, wait a second. This is so clumsy. Okay, what I want to ask you is, so we've seen the moves, we've heard the explanation. We know they have 11 draft picks. Will the 49ers be good in 2025? What do you think?
I do think they're going to be good because good is always defined by your record, and the schedule is very navigatable. Let's just say that. We don't have it in front of us, so we don't know who they play and when they play them. But we know who they play. We don't know when they play them. But the list of the teams that they play, my God, if they don't win 10 games this year, they probably should move on from the regime. I realize they've got a lot of holes on the roster right now, but they do have 11 picks. And I do, I think it's a loaded, deep draft, especially in spots where they need to rebuild. The Niners need to take 3 defensive tackles, but there's like 25 of them in this draft. So they might be able to, and they need at least a couple defensive ends. They need a linebacker. There's some great depth at some of these positions. So, it would take, let's just say this. The optimist in me says they got a shot because I believe in the draft and I believe in a lot of the players in the draft this year, particularly. But, there's if the Niners' greatest draft ever is the 86 draft, they got 8 starters. If they get 8 starters out of this, that would be nice, but it still would, I'm not sure if that would be enough. The 49ers need to get like a 15-man draft class, and they're going to need like 12 of those guys to produce and play and contribute and be good. So that's a tall ask, but I will still say there's a chance because the schedule's so bad, and I do like this draft class, and they did have a great draft class last year, and they've gotten the hard part down, and they've gotten the easy part wrong. So it's like, can you guys get the easy part right? First, second, and third rounds, those are supposedly the easier picks. It's harder to find a guy in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, or afterwards. But the Niners do the hard part well, and they do the easy part. They make it look difficult. So if they can just have some success on day 1 and day 2 of the draft, I think the playoffs are viable. Once you get there, anything can happen. So I do think they can have a good season, despite the fact they have a ton of holes. But it's going to take a Herculean draft.
I look at it a little differently. To me, they had a great draft last year and went 6-11. Like, there's only so much rookies can do, even if you have 4 good ones. I think that's more for 2026. The way I look at 2025, the rookies will contribute, and that'll be great. But for them to be good, like a team that goes to the playoffs and wins a game, I think it's almost all about McCaffrey. If McCaffrey stays healthy and plays almost up to the level he played in 2023, this team will be good. They'll be fine. They'll win a lot of games, even with a bunch of rookies on defense. But if he's not, if he plays 5 games again, if he's in and out and he's really not the player he was and it's over for him, I think the Niners are in trouble, even with the schedule. I think they're in serious trouble. I think they're worse on paper now than they were last year. And the only guy who's going to change it is him for 2025.
Yeah, it's a good take, I think, because I think it's pretty spot on. I would add a couple other guys to that list. I think Ricky Pearsall has to be really, really good. I mean, how could he not? I mean, what do you got? I mean, you got Jennings.
I mean, when's Aiyuk coming back?
I would say Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Say Thanksgiving.
And what conditions he going to be in without any training camp and all that?
Yeah, so I think Pearsall has to be big. I think CMC has to be big.
A first round pick has to be big.
Well, first of all, Jake Moody has to be big.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another one. There's no competition there. So your kicker's going to have to be a whole lot better than he was, and your running back's going to have to be healthy, and your first round draft choice receiver is going to have to really emerge in year 2, and then you're going to have
your rookie first round pick.
You're going to have a defensive draft that is epic, and that combined with Robert Saleh is going to have to turn the defense into something really good. And that's a tall ask, man.
It is.
Really is. Now, I won't say no, it can't be done, because I do believe it can be done. I'm a believer.
Maybe CMC has one more great year in him. Maybe he does. I don't know. He's 29, 28.
Right. He's not old. And Pearsall in the last 2 games, Grant, had 18 targets and 14 catches and looked really good. So it's like, are we going to get Pearsall from week 16 and 17 the whole year? Is he going to be a double-digit touchdown guy? Is he going to be this big-time player? If he is,
I'm optimistic about Pearsall. I didn't like the pick at all, but getting to know him and watching his arc and what he's been through, I would not bet against him.
And the big
he survived a gunshot wound.
Well, and the phrase that you said there, I think, is the one that I would totally agree with you on. Getting to know him. Now, you and I are we're not pretending we're buddies with all the guys on the team. We're not, but we do go in there and do talk to these guys, and you do get a feel for them. And I totally am with you on this one.
Yeah,
this guy's persona and the way he handled both his failure early. I mean, first of all, the gunshot, the failure, and then the success at the end, he was the same guy all the way through. Not like, oh, I'm riding high, I'm riding down. No, same guy all the way through, and also like really, really high standards for himself. Like, it's easy to recognize guys who have that. He's got that. So yeah, Pearsall, I'm more impressed by the person than I am by the player. The person that I saw react to his season, I think, is going to be primed for a big, big, big career. I like Pearsall. I don't know that he's ever going to be the number 1 receiver on the team or anything, but I think it's going to be one of those situations where it's 3rd and 5. Everybody in the whole joint knows it's Purdy to Pearsall, and yet Purdy's going to find Pearsall.
He strikes me as one of these guys who, he had this near-death experience that none of us can relate to. So you think of him, he's like 24, he's an athlete, he's a first-round pick. He doesn't have any perspective. He's probably it's all about himself. Like, no, he has more perspective than everyone else, and he's so nice. And in the locker room, he'd be like, "Hi, Larry. Hi, Grant." It's like, "Hi, Ricky. How you doing?" I mean, I think I relentlessly trashed the pick. Not him personally, but I wouldn't have made this pick. I don't like this pick. I'm skeptical. He didn't take any of that personally. I really like him. I'm looking forward to covering him.
He's a pro.
Yeah, no doubt.
He is a pro.
No doubt. One more. Hugo says, give BA a chance. He's a dog. When's the call in? I'll do one this week. I promise. I will. And I will give BA a chance. He's been through hell. Okay. Now that we've heard John Lynch, now that we've seen some moves, now that we know that the Niners are pretty chagrined that they lost Dre Greenlaw, or at least want to appear that way, do you think that, have you reconsidered what the Niners are going to do with the 11th pick?
Yeah, because, there was a report today, Nicholas McGee on Niners Nation said that the Niners tried to get EJ Speed, who's the Colts linebacker. Aaron Wilson of KPRC in Houston said that before the Texans signed EJ Speed away from the Colts, that the Niners were trying to get in there. He ultimately signed a 1-year deal with the Texans. But yeah, Grant, I think that the Niners wanted Greenlaw back because they don't, he's the starter. And then when they didn't get him back, I don't think they want to hand the gig to Winters. I mean, in an ideal world they would, but I don't think they believe in Winters on that level. And so I think they really badly wanted a linebacker, and they tried.
If they did, they wouldn't have signed Devondre Campbell, who was a
right.
I'm not going to say what he was. I mean, the one word coming to my head, he was a quitter. He was a quitter, and he was washed. That's what he was. D Winters, he can't be that good. And EJ Speed's almost 30. So,
yeah. So, so personally, I think that if you said what's going on there, I would say that that's they're hoping for the best. They're hoping for the best.
You think they go linebacker at 11?
I think there's a very good chance that they go linebacker at 11. Like Jalen Walker from Georgia, who, it's funny. Somebody, it was Mayock, compared him to Micah Parsons. He said he's Micah Parsons. I mean, if you really think he's Micah Parsons, that's the undersized defensive end who's being used at linebacker. Then, man, I mean, I'll just say this: he's an incredible athlete on a defense that was full of incredible athletes. He totally stood out, and I think if he's there on the board at 11, I think he's going to be a really hard player to pass up. I'm not saying he's their first choice, but I definitely think they will consider him heavily at 11.
I agree. And I like him a lot. I like the idea of him being able to play two positions that the Niners need. I think I'm starting to I change my mind every day, but today I think I like his teammate more, Mykel Williams. Let me make the case for Mykel. Mm-hmm. He's not the athlete that Jalen Walker is, but he is legitimately phenomenal against the run, which is something the Niners need. And as an edge rusher, I think he has a ton of power. And I think if you have two edge rushers in Bosa and Mykel Williams, two super powerful edge rushers, two guys who can also kick inside when you want, you're going to have a pretty good pass rush. I like Mykel Williams.
Well, I mean, the guy looks awesome. I mean, there's just no question about it. He looks the part. I mean, he really looks good. I mean, he could be the first guy off the bus. You know what I mean? He looks really good. And he is of the edge players. To me, he looks like he's got the best upside potential.
And he's the best run defender of the edge players.
But he wasn't healthy last year.
Nope.
And so last year's film might have not given us the best indication. I think the guy's a pretty good player, but he wasn't healthy last year completely. But if you see him, I mean, you're talking about 6'5", 270 and just ripped.
Length and power and strength.
I mean, he looks the way you want an
NFL
defensive end to look. But I kind of like Jalen Walker more.
Him too.
They're different, obviously. They both rush the passer. Walker can play linebacker. Mykel Williams is much more of your standard defensive end. But
who can kick inside a little bit, actually. Almost like Yetur Gross-Matos. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But he wasn't healthy last year.
I like that he played through it.
34.5-inch arms, by the way, from Mykel Williams.
Balky'd be all over that.
Yeah, he would just be like, give me that.
He's a lot like Trayvon Walker, who's a good player. Not number one pick, good player, but good player.
Right. I think that's a good call. Trayvon, he is. He's kind of big. He's a little bit stiffer like that, but he's a bigger guy. If the Niners like bigger defensive ends in the wide nine, he'd be a good edge setter. My only thing is when you watched him, he seemed like the kind of guy that should dominate more than he did.
I agree with you. My only thing with that is I feel like you see that a lot with Georgia defensive linemen. It's like, wait, so you're this 5-star blue chip dude and you had 4 sacks last year? Like, why? It's like, yeah, but all the Georgia D linemen kind of do that. Then they go to the NFL and most of them are good except for Robert Beal. Sorry, Robert.
You got to know. You got to know. I mean, like, if you look at the bust list over the last, 5-10 drafts, you're going to find a lot of guys from really big time programs. You're going to find a lot of guys from Bama, a lot of guys from Georgia, a lot of guys from LSU. Why? Because they're all like 5 stars and they're all in the same defense. And then, some guys are worthy of the 5-star designation. Other guys aren't. And sometimes it takes a while to figure out who's who.
Rolando McClain, Reuben Fall. I mean, that's the thing with linebackers, off-ball linebackers from Alabama. It's like, dude, you play behind 4 first-round picks on the D line. You've never had to take on a block in your life. All you have to do is just hit stick people. It's not going to be like that in the NFL. And do you even play coverage? I don't know.
It's like Robert Beal. Robert Beal's 6'5". He's 260. He's ripped.
He's terrible.
He runs sub 4.5. He gets nothing done.
He's the worst player on the team. I'm sorry, I don't mean to single someone out, but what does he do? Some people do contribute on special teams. I don't even know. I know he's on the special teams running around. I've never seen him do anything. Sorry. I don't want to take gratuitous shots.
And they need him. They need him. It's not like, well, yeah, but there's so many other guys and they don't really need him. No, they have a severe need.
Drake Jackson's down. Yeah.
Right. They needed this guy to step up, and he looks the part, but he doesn't actually play that way. And
Yeah.
I think Georgia gets a bunch of guys like this. They get these 5-star guys. They're all supposed to be monsters. So, and you can't listen to Kirby every time, John, because Kirby was going to tell you that he loves every one of his guys. This guy, if you want a guy who can set the edge, you'll take Robert Beal.
No,
he has not.
That's the experience the Niners have had with Saban. That's why they don't draft Alabama. They stopped drafting Alabama players because they felt that Saban would just be like, yeah, Reuben Foster, my favorite player of all time. Yeah, Cam Latu, love him. It's like, dude, like they trust Herm Edwards. They always draft Arizona State players because I think they feel like Herm will tell it straight. Yeah. Herm and John Lynch actually know each other. So anyway,
so there's a trust.
But Howie Roseman trusts Kirby. Howie Roseman trusts Kirby.
Right. Oh yeah, he totally does. He takes Georgia guys every year. And
the Niners should be taking Oregon guys. That's their pipeline. Oregon, Phil Knight.
Yeah, and I'm not loving the. Well, though I do kind of like Tez. I wouldn't mind seeing the Niners get Tez. I do like Tez.
I like Josh Connerly.
Yeah, he was a high, 5-star.
I like Derek Harmon.
Derek Harmon's got good pass rush numbers, but he doesn't have good run defense.
Does he?
Numbers.
Okay.
So that would be my concern there.
All right, I got to go to this cocktail party and see if Kyle Shanahan's going to be there.
Oh, yeah. What are you going to do at the cocktail party? Are you going to
wait for stalk Kyle? TMZ. Hey, Kyle, how you doing? A lot of people talking. No, I'm not going to. There's no interviewing. I'm just going to go have one drink and keep it chill and see if Kyle shows up. Sirianni will be there with his kid. Mike Tomlin will be there cracking jokes. But come on, Kyle, be the life of the party. You're the biggest.
Will he run from the media and only talk to football people, or will he actually take questions from the media and chat it up?
No questions. All you're supposed to do is just hobnob. Hey man, did you watch March Madness? What do you think of? What are you watching on TV? Can I get you a drink? It's all. But he might be like, Grant, I hate you. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Don't give me that. But Larry, thanks very much. Everyone, thank you very much for being with us. And the show goes on tomorrow. Stay tuned.
Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.